Hey, shalom, 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 lakam, which is peace unto you all. Hi, Rob Tawab La Atham, Za'achiakam Yawam or Chagadal Charlotte, which is good evening. This is your brother Yawam from the JMS camp in Charlotte. Nachamatam, Kayah, Malaka, Tashamayam, Kwara, repent ye for the kingdom of heaven is in hand. Call Layam La La, Banawa Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachakodash, Wamashana Lazaquim, Nawam Lakim, Sharachagadal, which is all praises to our Father Yahweh, which means he exists. Bahasham, in the name Yahweh Shai, he delivers, and double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Zatahoyam, this is Psalms chapter 12 and verse 8. And it says, the wicked walk on every side when the vilest men are exalted. And pretty much, I was reading this, I believe it was yesterday, and pretty much, it sparked in my spirit. And I just wanted to go into this precept. Adonai Tazah, Zabanayapa, Lord's will. This is a beautiful edification through the spirit. All right, so reading back from the top. And it says, the wicked walk on every side when the vilest men are exalted. All right, and I want to get this word for walk. All right, and it says halak, and it says to go, to walk, to come. It says to go, walk, come, depart, proceed, move, go away, to die, live, manner of life, figuratively. All right, I want to touch on this, the manner of life part, because it's going into, again, the word halak, which has a meaning of figurative, a manner of life, So it says the wicked walk on every side, So essentially what's pushed, what's susceptible, the conversation in the earth, is essentially is wicked conversation. That's essentially why those that are wicked are able to go as they please and do what they do in a wicked society, being that the earth has been given into the hand of the wicked. All right, reading it again, it says the wicked walk on every side. All right, because judgment is not going forth. All right, so it says the wicked walk on every side when the vilest men are exalted. All right, and in this season where the vilest men are exalted, ultimately wickedness is essentially thriving. Let me get a quick precept. This is Mashal Yah, Proverbs chapter 29 and verse 16, and it says, when the wicked are multiplied, transgression increaseth, but the righteous shall see their fall. All right, and ultimately, the wicked has been multiplied both in seed and then also in ideology. The mindset, the lifestyle has been ultimately multiplied, going into Hellenization, which pretty much is repackaged and westernization. So essentially, the wicked's mindset is being multiplied and transgression essentially is increasing, you see. But the righteous, we're seeing, the fall of Esau Edom, you see, because ultimately, his kingdoms have been found wanting, as pursuant to in Daniel. His kingdoms have been found and lacking righteousness, right? In which a kingdom that's essentially thrived, or excuse me, a kingdom that's incepted and ran off of wickedness is only for a season. All right, so going back to Psalms, chapter 12 and verse 6 or verse 8, it says, the wicked walk on every side when the vilest men are exalted. All right, in which this word for vile, all right, it says zawat. All right, and it says worthlessness. It says a shaking. All right, it says terror, trembling. All right, going back. And pretty much the point that I want to get was worthlessness. All right, because pretty much it says the wicked walk on every side when the vilest men are exalted. Those those that are pretty much worthless, vain men are exalted in this society. All right, Esau Edom. All right, people in worldly positions, they're pretty much exalted. They're pretty much put on that pedestal. All right, and the things that are of the scriptures, they're put low when it should be the other way around. What's pushed on this planet Earth, all right, is wickedness, and that's because the wicked is walking on every side. Being that it's no judgment that's going out. So let's get another one. Let's get Ayawab, Job chapter 9, and we'll get verse 24, and it says, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? All right, so the earth, all right, has been given into the hand. Your hand represents your power. So the wicked have the power of the earth currently. It says he covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? So a literal example of this was the time of iconoclasm during the Renaissance. You see, but then also in that, all right, it also goes into pretty much what the judges stand for. All right, it says he covered the faces of the judges thereof. With the judges, the Lord Yahweh, his son Yahweh Shai, all right, and the Israelites ultimately stand for righteousness. You see, so what Esau has done is ultimately covered over the true identity of what the Lord Yahweh Shai looks like. All right, also who is They also covered over, who was the people of the Lord, being that they said that they was the people. You see, in a sense, the world don't, the world is in a state of confusion, you see, because it's, Esau Edom wants to put everybody into an identity crisis. All right, and from that identity crisis, pretty much it comes from that, the covering of the faces of the judges thereof, because pretty much the judges ultimately stand for what's right and was righteous. All right, being that the vilest men are exalted, currently as we got in Psalms the 12th chapter, everything that's pretty much being pushed out is deception. All right. So reading it back, it says the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? So if it wasn't the Esau Edom, so-called, excuse me, if it was not Esau Edom, the so-called white man, who would it be? Who is putting their face, all right, as the Lord Yahweh Shai. All right, because as it stands, you can go in, a 2/3 house, all right, that's into so-called Christianity, and there'd be a pale-faced, blue-eyed devil, staring right back at you. That's not the true image of the Lord, and that essentially serves as, the illustration of this precept, the covering of the faces of the judges thereof, because ultimately the true the true image, all right, and the true depiction of the Lord is found in Revelation, the 1st chapter, all right, but that's not what's pushed, all right, in the earth, all right. So continuing on, let's get Isaiah Yashaya chapter 60, all right, and we'll get verse 1, and it says, a glorified Zion, and it says, arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. All right, and what the light, talking about the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of these scriptures, are ultimately the spirit of the Lord Yahweh Shai is resting upon the elect. All right, and it's being seen in the elect. All right, because the elect ultimately is pushing forth this word. All right, it says verse 2: For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people. All right, so darkness is covering the earth, being that the vilest men are exalted. All right, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked, as the precepts that we got. All right, so darkness. All right, let's go into this word for darkness. All right, and it says chashak, and it says obscurity, secret place. It says ignorance, destruction, wickedness. It says misery. All of that is pushed. All right, and these don't just stop at these specific words. All right, ignorance. All right, it's a saying in the world, ignorance is bliss. So being in a state of not being aware, pretty much that people are happy with not knowing what's going on, not knowing about the scriptures, not knowing about prophecy, not knowing about having a certain type of level of discernment. All right, that's what's pushed in the world. All right, ignorance. All right, misery is what's pushed in the world. All right, misery is given to Jake as a diet. All right, and this is done by way of how Esau essentially sets up this system. All right, destruction. All right, the mindsets that was pushed by Esau Edom, essentially in the end, they ultimately gonna lead to destruction. All right, so going back, Isaiah Yashaya chapter 16 verse 2. For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people. But the Lord shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. All right, so essentially it's gross darkness across the minds of the people. All right, essentially that again, that darkness goes into a state of misery, ignorance, destruction, and death. All right, it says, but the Lord shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. And this truth, this light is essentially being seen upon the men of the Lord, the elect. All right, so let's get another one. That'll be it. But this is Zayashaya. This is Isaiah chapter 59, and we'll get verse 14. Because going back into the scripture said that the wicked walk about on every side. Being that the wicked is walking about, that shouldn't be in a righteous sense. All right, because if it's wickedness, in a society, a true righteous ruler will cut that out. I'm gonna get that point real fast. This is Bon Sirach. Let me see, Bon Sirach chapter 10. All right, and we'll get verse 1. It says, a wise judge will instruct his people, and the government of a prudent man is well ordered. All right, and which, I'm going to keep going. It says, as the judge of the people is himself. All right, and being that, it's wicked rulers in charge of the planet Earth. Hey, well, everybody in the society is going to be wicked. It says, as the judge of the people is himself, so are his officers, and what manner of man the ruler of the city is, such are all that dwell therein. All right, and that's why it's a whole bunch of wickedness going on the planet Earth, chiefly in America, Babylon the Great. Verse 3, an unwise king destroyeth his people, but through the prudence of them which are in authority, the city shall be inhabited. So being that it's not judgment going out, all right, that shows that it's a lack of prudence. All right, so if it's a lack of prudence, all right, that shows that it's an unwise king, and that's ultimately the destruction of the people. All right, and being that it's a kingdom has to be served by subjects. All right, and those subjects have to have a righteous mindset. All right, and that's not what's going on. Going back to again the precept that we got in Psalms, the second chapter, the 12th chapter. All right, so let's go back to this. This is Isaiah 59 and verse 14. It says, "And judgment is turned away backward, and justice standeth afar off. For truth is fallen in the street, and equity cannot enter." True equity can't enter. The mindsets, of the people. True equity can't enter. In America, Babylon the Great. You see, because ultimately, the wicked is in rulership. All right, they don't rule. All right, with a righteous mindset. All right, and that's shown, all across the board. When it comes to the court systems, though, essentially they got what's called, sentencing. All right, and sentencing goes back to the census. So ultimately, when you look at the legislative area of pretty much Esau's system, ultimately, and the judicial and the executive, all of those branches, essentially, it's a whole system to where it's set up on the census, going back to a sentencing. That SEN goes back to the census, you see, because everybody that works in those different sectors, they're going to give you something based on their discretion, in air quotations, which means how they feel. They're going to give you a sentencing on how they feel. Oh, well, this cop, he felt in danger, so he essentially detained someone based off of how he felt. So true equity can't enter the land of America, Babylon the Great, you see, because it's founded on deception and lies. And essentially, the vilest men are being exalted in this society. All right. So continuing on, verse 15, it says, "Yeah, truth faileth, and he that departed from evil maketh himself a prey. And the Lord saw it, and it displeased him that there was no judgment." And ultimately, going back to this precept, being that righteousness is not, being pushed. Hey, we're essentially witnessing the downfall of Esau, Edom, our enemies. All right. So I'm gonna get this, and I'm gonna go ahead and close. But this is Proverbs 29 and verse 16, and it says, "When the wicked are multiplied, transgression increaseth, but the righteous shall see their fall." So being that the mindsets, the lifestyles, and what's pushed, or what Esau Edom essentially his plans, being that that's pushed, all right, everybody else is essentially being impressionable and subscribing to those ways, all right, other than the elect. All right, and that's why essentially transgression is increasing. All right, and again, that's why we're seeing the downfall of Esau Edom. All right, because he doesn't stand for righteousness. Now going back, this is Isaiah chapter 59 and verse 15, and it says, "Yeah, truth faileth, and he that departed from evil maketh himself a prey." Because being that wickedness is in. All right, wickedness has a season, which is it's quickly diminishing. You see, but it still has somewhat of some power. All right, and being that the wicked are in rulership. All right, those that are essentially departing from that wickedness, all right, they're made into a prey. All right, because this society stands for wickedness. All right. So reading it back from the top, it says, "Yeah, truth faileth, and he that departed from evil maketh himself a prey, and the Lord saw it, and it displeased him that there was no judgment." All right, and again, I'm gonna get this. All right, because it's gonna tie into the point. This is Daniel chapter 5, and we will get verse. Let me see, verse 25, and it says, I'll skip straight to the point. Verse 27, it says, "Taqwa," and it says, "Thou art weighed in the balances, and art found wanting." You see, so Esau Edom. I'm gonna read it from the from verse 25, verse 24. Daniel chapter 5 and verse 24. "Then was the part of the hand sent from him, and this was the writing written, and this is the writing that was written, mana taqwa upharsin." All right, which these are in Assyrian, but it says many tekel upharsin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Mana, the Most High hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Hey, so this devil has a certain amount of time that he's going to rule for, and he's not going to go a day past it. All right, verse 27. Tekel, thou art weighed in balances and art found wanting. All right, so he's been found wanting. Wanting means to lack. So his kingdom has been found lacking righteousness, and being that his kingdom has been found lacking righteousness, hey, well, essentially, we're witnessing their fall. And going back to the opening precept, Psalms 12 and verse 8, it said that the wicked walk about on every side, and the vilest men are exalted. All right, being that that's what's going on, again, wickedness had a season to where it was going to be in, you see, but right now, the Lord is essentially reversing those roles to where, righteousness is in, and, what we got to look forward to is the kingdom, so Adawan Tazaza Banaya Apollo is with us, a beautiful edification to the spirit. Wadamar Taza Atam Yash Lata Wablu as well. You have a good night. Washalam Lakam, which is peace unto you all. Shalom, shalom.